It's this.
Welcome, everybody. Come on in. We're talking about sex today.
Leslie, we don't hear your music.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. It's saying I'm sharing.
Like it is, and how
Is that better?
how it was, and of course how it should be. Those who think it's dirty, it's short. Pick up the needle, right forward.
Okay, I'm gonna bring it down. I don't know what's happening with my phone. Welcome, everybody. So great to see you here today. This is a very special live event. We had so much buzz with the Madelyn series on Wisdom Well that we thought it's time. We need to have this conversation. We have a whole panel here today to talk about sex, including Madelyn, who will be with us here today with her video off. But really, oh boy, I am sharing my screen. Can everybody see that? I'm on the airplay here in Baja, Mexico. So I just wanted to introduce our panel. We have Madelyn with us. We have Michael with us. Michael Blake, Meow. He's the male escort to older women. So we'll hear their story. We meow, meow. Honestly, I'm my notes here because I don't have double screen. Susan Cole is with us here today. She's an MEA alum with a lot of insight to share. Dr. Deborah Hafner, a sexologist for 49 years. Thanks, Susan. Good to see you. We also have Dr. Wendy Warner, who's a medical doctor and gynecologist. We have Daniel Landis, who is one of our content facilitators, and of course, Chip Conley. So welcome. This is our panel. We can't show Michael and Madelyn on the panel because they're off video, but they are here. And yes, let's start with. Wait, Chip, you wanted to ask a question to put in the.
Why don't normally we ask where people are calling in from, but we're going to spice it up and in the chat. Why don't you put in what's your favorite form of pleasure or sexual, sensual, otherwise? Mine is chocolate. So I'm going to throw chocolate in here. What's your favorite form of pleasure? And go spicy if you want.
That's music, food, TV, chocolate for sure, dance, movement, touch, massage. I was going to say that one. That's great. Ice cream. Love it.
Oral sex. Yes. Annie. Go for it. Keep talking after. I love that, Deborah. Making love on psychedelics. Okay.
Oh,
you know what?
I second that one.
Nice.
We had somebody here. We had Duke from 10,000 Waves here, and he was saying what it's like to get a massage on ketamine. I've never done that. I have no idea, but he said it's.
I highly recommend it. I love it. It seems like it would be a weird combination, but it's amazing.
Michael, is that you? Yes.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. So Michael and Madelyn, welcome. You stirred up.
Thank you. It's so exciting to be here.
Well, back on 4th of July week, I sort of gave the MEA or the Chip Conley Wisdom Well daily blog over to our community. And we had a series of blog posts focused on sex, sexuality, and midlife and beyond. And Madelyn, who I've known for more than a quarter century and is an MEA alum, she decided she wanted to write a 3-part series on her experience in her 60s of choosing to reach out to male escort. And Madelyn, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what led you to this, as well as what the experience was for you about having the courage and the excitement around sharing your story, albeit anonymously.
Okay. Well, about 2.5 years ago, I set an intention to have sex. I didn't know if I worked. It had been so long. It had been 17 years when I first met Michael. And my husband had a series of many medical situations. We tried everything known to humans, and, it just was not there. We have intimacy, but no penetration. So I wanted penetration. So I heard from a friend that they knew of this man who was seeing another client. And my husband left town for a week, and I said, I'm going to do this. I am in my 69th to 70th year. I'm turning 70 this year. And I just really wanted to have sex. So I had 2 sessions in the first week with Michael, and I felt like a new person the first day. After our session, I was jumping around the house saying, "You go, girl, this is so good." This is like, why'd you wait so long? I think I waited so long because it wasn't the right, I mean, Michael was vetted, it was safe, it was it was perfect. It was just perfect. It still is perfect. And we're in like 6.5 months later. And, the difference in my life is outstanding. I'm healthier, I'm happier, I'm younger. I've had 5 people say to me, "Did you get a facelift?" I'm like, "No, sex." So it's just, there was a lot of things. It was aging. Did I work? I mean, I know some women have issues. I'm fortunate. I haven't had any issues at all. But the outstanding
Madelyn, when you say issues, what issues are you referring to?
Well, women can have pain with vaginal sex. Some women, don't like oral sex, or performing oral sex, or having oral sex. Some people have problem when they get older, their vagina gets too small and it's hard to be penetrated. Being excited first and having lots of lubrication is very important. Menopausal sex isn't like for wimps. It's kind of, it's kind of a little more complicated than when you're 20. But I didn't really feel like any of those issues were a block for me. I just wanted to build on the beauty of what we were experiencing, which is still happening. I found things like, it used to be hard for me to, like, if I got down on the ground, it used to be hard for me to get up. I just get up, instead of walking, I'm gliding, I'm excited. I'm, even with all the stresses I have with what's going on with my husband, who's probably not going to be with us too much longer, it's like, there's so much beauty that I can manage this. So it's very sexy. It's very, when you have that sexual flow in your body, it's just like the best. It's so good. I just,
yeah,
it's like, it's like having a chamber that's been like really quiet for 17 years. And all of a sudden it's like out there, and it's like, I'm much more voracious than I ever thought I would be. I'm just like, bring it on. I'll try anything. It's just like, if it doesn't work, fine. But, it's good. Just being really open-minded, and it's, on one level, it's very selfish, but it's the best investment I have ever made in myself.
Wow. Thank you, Madelyn. So Michael, interestingly enough, this was coincidental, but just so everybody knows, I knew Michael. I didn't know Michael was doing this part-time as a calling. And all of a sudden, Madelyn told me about who Michael was. I was like, oh, I know him. Tell us, how did you get into the business of becoming a male escort for older women?
Hi, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. I'm blown away by how many people are here. And of course, thank you, Madelyn, for your courage of sharing your story. I have always been around kind of alt sexual communities like BDSM, kink, polyamory.
Explain what
Uh,
BDSM is, just so
uh,
everybody knows.
well, it's 4 words in 6 words in 4 letters: bondage and discipline, dominance, submission, sadomasochism, which actually I don't really practice with my clients too much. It's kind of 50 Shades of Grey stuff. But I've been in these worlds for a while, and someone came to me and said, I have a friend who has a friend who is 80 and who has not had sex for a long time for various reasons, and who wants to do this. And she's been looking for someone to pay. She just wants to make it easy instead of, she doesn't know how else she's going to find it. So this was 3 degrees of separation. And I think she came to me and knows that I'm curious and part of these different, exploratory communities. And I thought, let me try this. And within a week, I was having tea with this woman, potential client. We really hit it off. Lovely, lovely woman. And a week after that, I was at her place, and that was my first time being paid for something like this. And we were both nervous because it was her first time too. It went super well. We've seen each other like 30 times or something like that in the last almost year. And she feels just like a really different person. I think, all of us, if we haven't been having sex for a while, just having regular access to great sex just is totally transformative.
Wow. Okay. So, Michael, I just, because when the post came out with Madelyn and the three guest posts, I did get some emails back from people saying, what about the risks of this health wise?
Mm-hmm.
And what about the ethics of this for Madelyn, your husband? Do you guys want to just speak to that? And then I'm gonna go next to Deborah, our sexologist, to talk a little bit more about this, and including how to find men like Michael. Which there's a number of people in the chat who are talking about that. But Madelyn, why don't you first say how did you get to the place where you said, like, you know what, I can do this. I it's okay, and my husband, who doesn't know about this, would probably be fine with it.
Well, I want to say about 6 years ago, when he was more compos mentis, he said, if you ever want to act on something, because we're not having penetration sex and it feels right, go ahead. I actually thought when I came down to MEA, I might have a, one night stand or something like that, but it didn't work. I mean, it didn't work. It was fine.
You kept talking to me about it, but I wasn't really very available.
Yeah, I know why too, but anyway. Yeah. So I feel like I have permission, even though he doesn't remember that he gave me permission. But the truth is, if he found out tomorrow, I would still do it, because this has been so good for me. We health wise, Michael gets tested on a regular basis. I hadn't had sex with anybody in 17 years. So I felt like I was a pretty low risk. We use condoms. We wash our hands a lot. We're careful. I get tested occasionally too. And we just, I don't really feel like, I feel like we're being responsible adults, and I don't feel like it's like a super risk.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, there's lots of great things coming in the chat, including Eileen talking about Good Luck Leo Grand, which is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
Emma Thompson.
Yeah.
Michael, talk about your perspective on it.
Yeah, and by the way, that movie, I couldn't recommend it more. It's on Hulu. You might have to, subscribe for a month or something to Hulu to get it, but it's the best depiction, most realistic and best depiction of sex work I've ever seen in the films, in any movie. There's so many stereotypes and myths about sex work. Most movies you'll see depict sex workers as like broken creatures who are doing this out of pure desperation, or trafficking victims or something like that. And that does exist, of course. In my case, I'm 47. I have a very empowered life. I'm doing this by choice. interestingly, I was a copywriter, a commercial writer, and kind of this work came along at just the right time for me because all of that's getting destroyed by AI right now. So I don't think sex robots are gonna, be online anytime soon. So I've made a career shift. I'm doing it full time. I really enjoy it. It is work in the sense that I'm making a living, but it's really fun and I'm here to serve and just I'm making people a lot happier now than I did when I was writing stupid advertising copy.
Very good. Thank you. So Deborah, as a sexologist for, gosh, is it 49 years? Is that correct?
It was 49 years this summer. I don't look that old, right?
No, you don't. You look good, girl. So talk a little bit about what it means to be a sexologist and what you see for people over 50 and this specific question about we're sort of familiar in our society about men who go to often younger women for sex work, but we're less familiar with the opposite. Older women going maybe to younger men for sex or touch. So tell us about your perspective, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So so I started as a sex educator with teenagers and young adults when I was a young adult. And now I've turned some of my attention to sex for older people as I've become an older person. And I think a lot of the difficulty is what do we mean when we talk about sex? And so your caller is talking about how she missed penetration. And there are other ways to have penetration besides a man with a penis. So dildos, sex toys, vegetables, fingers. There's a problem that teenagers have, and we carry it to adulthood, which is most of us learned about sex with a baseball metaphor. And that was that real sex was getting home. And real sex meant intercourse. It meant a hard penis. And you probably remember how heterosexist it was. So you weren't having sex if you weren't putting a penis inside a vagina. Well, as we get older, if we carry that message forward, it's going to get harder for a lot of us. And so if sex doesn't mean intercourse, it means all of the things that people put in the chat. It means bathing together, massaging each other, touching each other, holding each other. I once had a woman say to me, I don't have sex very much. And I said, well, when do you touch your partner? And she said, well, we get each other off in the shower 3 times a week. And I was like, that's a lot of sex, that we have this idea. And so if we can let go of sex as needing a hard penis or a wet vagina, and to think about that we have fingers and we have hands and we have mouths and we have toys, that there are many good ways that we can continue to stay connected. So one of my messages to older people is you can have great sex without your genitals at all. In fact, as Michael, I think would support, in the BDSM community, there's actually very little intercourse that goes on. It's much more about sensate play and touching and feeling in different ways. For those of you who are in the long-term relationships where sex is just boring, you've done it 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 times with the same partner, and you've done it like you were in high school, like you kiss, touch breasts, touch genitals, have intercourse, have an orgasm, and go to sleep. So no wonder it gets really boring. And so we need to start thinking in long-term relationships about sex as a recommitment ritual.
Talk about the 5 C's for, actually, before we go to 5 C's, let's talk about this idea of men offering sex to women who are paying for it. How would some random person on this call, many of you who have written in the chat, find someone like that, find a man like that?
So I'm going to say I'm not the best person to answer that because I fortunately, when I became single at the age of 66, then found a colleague, and so never had to go down that road or haven't had to go down that road since. There is a national surrogacy organization, so you can Google search that. It's legal in some states. There are people, though, who are certified sex therapists. I'm an educator, but these are people who are psychodynamically trained. And they would know if there is legal surrogacy in your area and how to find those people. There are internet sites somebody put in the chat field, but I'm wondering if some of the other panelists might answer that better for you.
Okay, very good. Then last question for you before we move on. So I'm a guy who's not having sex. I mean, I'm 64 years old next month. I'm on hormone depletion therapy. So that is the primary reason I'm not having sex, is because I have a testosterone of 8 or 10 because of my cancer, my prostate cancer. But the truth is that after having a very active sex life in my early 50s that went up till about 55 or 56, my libido started to just tank. Should I be worried about that? And should I feel ashamed about that? I mean, and I'm not the only person here, I'm sure, who has that issue in their life. I am in a partnership with a partner who I've been with off and on since 1989. So it doesn't take a lot away from us, because we are at a stage in our sexual life where it's pretty dormant, and that for both of us, that seems to be okay. But sometimes I feel a bit ashamed about this.
Yeah, so it is so highly individual. And if you and your partner are happy with where you are, then that's what matters. So sexual desire goes up and down throughout our lives. And so you may find that when your treatments are over, in fact, that you are more interested again. But I would hope, and you don't have to tell us your 162 best friends here, but I would hope that you are still hugging each other, holding hands, cuddling together, giving each other massages. See, if we don't think about sex as I want to penetrate you, I want to have an orgasm. But if we think about it as a way of being sensual with our whole bodies, then all of us can continue to have sex throughout our whole lives, but only if you want to. And working out with your partner, what frequency is okay? What activities are okay? What alternatives can you open? Again, don't tell your 162 best friends here. Can we go outside of our commitments? I mean, how do we make it so that we continue to have our needs met? And never say never, Chip.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, okay. Listen, I'm open to it. I'm crossing my fingers that I get my PSA score today or Monday that will actually take me after a year and a half on this hormone depletion therapy. I may be off of it, and let's see what comes back. So let's move on. Thank you, Deborah. Really appreciate that. Let's move on to Susan. Susan's a friend, and I know there's a term that she used early on when I started to get to know her. She's an MEA alum as well. And she talked about bodily autonomy. Was it bodily autonomy? Was that what it was?
That is one of the terms that I use. Yeah. And
So
another favorite that I have right now is, which is a little bit different than what Deborah was talking about, but feeling self-partnered now is how I refer to myself. And yeah, if you want me to share a little bit more
Tell us
about
your
this.
story a little bit. You were married for about 25 years, and then all of a sudden we're not. And then okay, now what do I do with that? And tell us a little bit.
So yeah, first, I love Madelyn. I love you, Madelyn, and I love the
Thank you.
topic. Thanks for saying all the things. Yeah, and I'm not a professional here, but maybe I can start in the messy middle of my story, Chip, because you're all about transitions. But I found my buried Madelyn really unexpectedly with another man when I was married in my late 40s. And he was like a Michael to me and really helped me connect to these dormant parts of myself and honestly reconnect to my life generally. And that experience was really a catalyst for me to have the courage and the power to really want to get to know those parts of myself, because I thought that I really didn't like sex, which was entirely untrue. And I realized that really the eros that I felt was not anybody else's. It was really my eros. And I think when I think bigger picture about what happened to me, I think that there was so much programming that I had around not trusting my own body. A lot of the messaging that I got growing up that my sexuality is dangerous, it needs to be kept under wraps. And I think that this is true for women, but for men as well. And I think it really disconnected me from my own intuition and my body. So my journey a lot, and that's the bodily autonomy part that you were talking about, has been this reclamation of my own self. And it's led me into this like questioning of everything. So I'm like, oh my God, you know, when I met my husband, who I now call my husband because he was my husband, I was 21 and I didn't even realize that there were other options out there. Like, I think a lot of the younger generations now, it's not obvious that, oh, you're just gonna, you know, a man and a woman get married and they have kids. And for me, when I entered into that relationship, I wasn't asking all the questions that I'm asking myself now. And now, yeah, I really feel like my erotic self, like I'm in service to her now. She's like the center of my life. And I really appreciated, you know, I'm not negating the period of my life where I was married. I think it was a wonderful experience, but I also think, like we were just talking about, domesticity can really kill the erotic charge between people. And I think we ended up with a highly functioning business relationship. And I think that was a lot of, I think I didn't want to look at that part of myself because I was afraid to go there because I really wasn't interested in having sex with my partner anymore. So yeah, I'm just glad that we're having these conversations, and I really appreciate Madelyn. And I also want to say that I don't think you need to be in a sexless marriage for a long time and be a caregiver to be asking questions and thinking about how you can prioritize reconnecting to that part of yourself. I mean, it really feeds and nourishes me now, and it's connected to my creativity, my power. There's a lot around power dynamics that I am investigating these days. And all of this really, you know, feel like vitality to me. And I'm like, this is like the center of my life now. And I'm not even partnered right now. And I think, you know, the one other thing, and then I'll shut up, but this isn't Eros is mine to own, and it's something I can share with a man, but it's not driven by a man. It lives inside me. So yeah.
You've used the term before, sex worth wanting.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That came from a sex therapist that I was listening to recently, and I think her name is Peggy Kleinplatz. And she has a book out called Magnificent Sex. And I think she even did like qualitative research, and she focuses on older people specifically and people with disabilities. And it kind of goes back to, I think, what Deborah was saying earlier, that we think of sex as, you know, in heterosexual couples anyway, the penis goes in the vagina. There's a climax for the penis owner, and maybe for the vagina owner, but can't guarantee that. And I don't think that's great sex. I really think that that's how babies are made. And that was my health, you know, lesson in 8th grade. There wasn't anything about magnificent sex. There was about how babies are made. And yeah, and I think most of us on this call are past the stage of having babies. So I think, you know, for me, my bar is really high right now because I'm just exploring my sexuality in so many different ways. And actually, there's somebody on this call right now that is an MEAer that I met, and we recently did mistress class, which is a domination.
Oh.
And it was taught by a PhD graduate from Berkeley. So it's a lot about the psychology of power dynamics, which I'm just fascinated by, and playing with power dynamics. Play is really important to me right now. Super into self-expression. And yeah, so like sex worth wanting has to be additive, has to be better than what I can do myself and do in other ways. And I guess I would say, like, for me, it's a man, like some of the aspects I think of what I was reading in the Michael Madelyn blog, and how Madelyn was referring to Michael. But I think a lot of women, I mean, I can't speak for all women, but a man that's really residing in his power and comfortable with his own self, playing with that tension arc, And yeah, I think it can look a ton of different ways.
Thank you, Susan. Let's go to Wendy, Dr. Wendy. Wendy, you're a functional medicine gynecologist. Maybe let's start with explaining what that is. And then what are some of the key things biologically that we ought to know around being sexual after age 50 for both men and women?
Okay. So functional medicine is simply root cause medicine. I do prescribe medication. I do a lot of lifestyle and diet and supplements and herbs primarily. So I love the fact that the way we're designed as humans is that the best way to keep good pelvic health as we get older is frequent orgasms, because it brings great blood flow to the pelvis. So that's awesome. The best way to prevent prostate cancer is frequent ejaculations. Awesome. So when I talk to patients about sex,
that to my mother.
Well, okay, yeah. But I mean, and yes, and whenever I say that to some women, I go, you don't have to be there. He just has to ejaculate. When there's a couple things when I'm talking to patients, to get a feel for what they think of as sex, my first question is, how do you know you're done? Because if you think about it, if it's the vaginal penetration between a heterosexual couple, he has an orgasm, maybe, he ejaculates, maybe she has an orgasm, and then you roll over and go to bed. That's what a lot of people think of. Well, once you've had your orgasm, you're done. It's like, well, who says you have to have an orgasm? I mean, that is nice, but that isn't necessarily the end all and be all of sex. Now, the other thing that I say to people is, as you're going through the menopausal transition, things are going to change. I know more about women than men. So when I'm talking to my female patients, I'm saying, listen, as you go through the change and your hormones are changing, things are going to be different. It may take a little longer to get appropriately lubricated. You definitely can't be in a rush. And what a lot of people don't think about is if we just are in the mind frame of, okay, fine, let's get it over with. The vagina is not ready. The vagina lengthens and widens to make space as we get aroused. So if that doesn't happen, it is going to hurt. So if in doubt, have your own orgasm first. That way you know you're ready.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty easy.
Gosh.
And you're probably already appropriately lubricated. Now, many women, if
That's
they haven't,
so good. I mean, like it's the opposite of what normally happens, which is the men get off, and then if the woman's lucky, she gets off. Oh, that's so good.
She gets to go first.
Yeah.
The other thing that a lot of people get confused about, they know they're having painful sex, and they're going, but I feel like I'm getting wet. I don't understand why it hurts. For some of us, if we're not using hormone therapy, the connective tissue underneath the vaginal opening literally constricts. And so the opening is less distensible. And so it's kind of tight and it can hurt just on the way in. That's fixable. Totally fixable. Little estrogen cream. And then once the tissue is a little bit in better shape, you can do perineal massage, which is just stretching everything out. I taught this to my pregnant girls so that they wouldn't tear when they delivered their babies. It's the same thing. And way long time ago, and I'm not going to go through the whole story, but I had this 80-something-year-old patient whose husband had been ill for a long time. So she hadn't had intercourse with him in forever because he had been sick. And then she was a widow, had been for quite a while. She moves into this retirement place. She comes in for her visit and she looks totally petrified. I said, what's wrong? She goes, I met a guy. I went, that's great. She goes, yeah, he wants to have sex. And I'm looking at her and she goes, oh, he's 15 years younger. I went, oh, okay. I'm wondering how he's going to have sex, but okay, good. So she goes, but nothing's been in there except your speculum in a really long time. So I taught her how to do perineal massage. There was no way I was going to get this lady to buy a dildo. So I got her a medical vaginal dilator set, and she used those. I said, well, how much time can we have? And she goes, I can put them off for a few months. I said, good, do that. You just play in the meantime. And they went away on vacation. And I still to this day have the postcard that she sent me, and all it said was, thanks, it worked.
Wow, brevity. Are there non-hormonal ways to help with vaginal dryness?
Yes. I mean, estrogen is great. You can actually get compounded DHEA, which is another hormone that works. If you're not a candidate for hormones or it makes you a little nervous, there is a device from a company called JoyLux. The company is joylux.com. The device is called a V-Fit, and it's shaped like a dildo. There's a little battery on one end, and the end that you insert has a ring of red lights. And so when you turn it on, the lights come on, it warms up, you get a little bit of vibration. That's not for fun. That's so that it's sort of like a TENS unit. Because if it's going to be a little uncomfortable, you'll get the vibration message rather than the pain message. And you use hyaluronic acid gel, which is good for the vaginal mucosa. You use that to insert it. You put it in for 10 minutes. You do that every other day. And in 3 months, you're ready to go. And then you use it as needed for touch-ups. There is also this big fancy red laser therapy that you can spend several $1,000s to do, but do it at home.
Wow. So it's such a big industry here. We're gonna move on. And Wendy said when we were about to start, she said this is gonna take three hours, but we only have an hour here, so we're gonna do our best to go to questions soon. But before we go to questions, we're gonna bring DL up. DL is one of our facilitators at here in Santa Fe. He's somebody I met a long time ago at Burning Man. He's 53 and he's got a wife who's 14 years younger, who's an amazing massage therapist here at the ranch. Talk a little bit about your story and my story are a little different. When I was 53, your age, I was raging. I still had a very active sex life and it was quite wonderful. I think the best sex I've had in my life happened in the first half of my 50s. You're still going for it, dude. So tell us a little bit about your experience, about the ebb and flow of your sexual life, and then talk about your point of view around the importance of touch and of, like maybe creating, some new laws around a libertarian perspective on sexuality.
Yeah, thanks, Chip. I didn't know what to expect getting older, and the stories that I heard were that the diminishing libido was in the future, and I haven't had that experience yet. But really, I want to start by just thanking the panelists and hearing. There was a comment that said something about it's nice to not always just hear the male perspective of sex, and I agree. It's really not the full picture, and so to be able to be around such wise and a wise and enlightened conversation around sex is exactly where we need to go. And Madelyn and Michael, thank you so much. When I read the article, it was so empowering. And what I loved about it was that, Madelyn, I feel like you were able to say things because of your situation that just created an empathy for the sexual disconnections that we can have with our partners that we love, and you found a solution. And Michael, for you to be able to stand in your power and also provide that service is just really beautiful. It reminds me of the opening lines of a Mary Oliver poem from Wild Geese. It says, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." And that's it. Letting the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Like, think about really going in, and Deborah talking about there's so many other ways to find that. And for Madelyn to say, I just wanted to get fucked. I wanted to get penetrated. Her soft animal of her body wanted to love what it loves. And then so for me to kind of go into my own sexuality, and I identify as a sensualist. And sometimes that takes away when I read a lot of spiritual texts and they say, deny the body. And I'm all about the body. I'm all about touch. I really enjoy any sensation that is comforting, touch being one of them. But in order to really discover what the soft animal of my body desires, I had to overcome a lot of shame. I had to overcome a lot of viewpoints that want to talk about, that want to have a perception of my libido as oppressive. And I had to really give myself a time to say, I love what I love, and I love touch and the practices that I've gone into for that. Because if I put all of that pressure on one partner, that partner doesn't need to feel like they are solely responsible for my soft body desiring touch. But then when you start to open the marriage, which I've been in that situation, there's always this fear of somebody finding love outside of you while they're pursuing their soft body desires. So this idea of hiring for this purpose, to me, is so enlightened. And there was a real missed opportunity. And I don't know what the guy who owns the Patriots,
Robert Kraft,
right? He gets busted in a sting operation at some massage parlor in Florida. And this is a very powerful man. And the media covers it. And he had this opportunity at that moment to say, this is a opportunity for me to get my needs met in a way that is hopefully consensual. And as Michael said, there are these situations where it's sex trafficking, but a lot of the people in this industry are empowered people who also choose this by choice, not because they're forced into it. So I think where I think we can go as this group of people that are on this call is, can we look at decriminalizing and destigmatizing sex work, or as I've learned to call it, touch work? Can we start to do this? And what would it take to destigmatize it? It took Madelyn, right? Just owning her desire, taking the risk, taking the challenge to say, I'm going to seek this out. And I'm not sure where that lies in is this legal or is this illegal? But I think we can start to have broader conversations. And once we accept it, can we start to change legislation and start changing the sex laws around touch workers?
Wow, beautiful. Thank you, DL. Let's open it up for some questions, and maybe we can bring all of the speakers up on the panel, up on stage. Obviously, Madelyn and Michael can't because they are off video. So I see that Sunny has her hand up, so we're going to go to Sunny. But I just want to say a quick thought. This is, if I'm not mistaken, Leslie, was this? We did make this available to Wisdom Well readers, but we primarily promoted it just to our MEA alum community. And I just want to say I'm so proud. I'm proud to be having a conversation like this amongst very mature, thoughtful people. And it's beautiful that we can do this. There are a lot of organizations that could not have this conversation right now. And I don't think my Stanford Alumni Association would be doing this right now. So let's just be honest about that. All right, let's go to Sunny. Sunny.
Thank you. So I believe that the discovery of ourselves through the erotic journey is really the reason to have sex. And so I have two questions, well, a two-part question for Michael. One, the first part is that I understand from reading your website that you are in a primary live-in poly relationship. And I'm wondering how you keep that sexual relationship sacred and distinct from your work, so that the way you touch and kiss your chosen partner isn't the same as the way you kiss and touch your clients. So that's the first part. And then the
Let's actually,
second,
Sunny, let's go ahead and let him answer that
okay.
one first, and then we'll go to the second question. It's a very
Great.
good question.
Thank you, Sunny. Great question. Yeah, so I have a girlfriend. We've been together almost 2 years. We've lived together about a year. We were already polyamorous, so very comfortable with open and honest conversations about other partners. This is a lifestyle that works great for some people and is horrible for other people. It's not better or worse, but they're very different. And it's always worked for me. And when I discussed with her this opportunity, she was super supportive, and she loves the idea that I am supporting older women in this way, and is just really supportive. We're super open about it, and I think also it makes it easier for everyone to kind of know that I have this romantic love partner, and there is a lot of emotion with my clients. I have a little segment on my site where there's a concept I call untangled love. So I distinguish that from what I would call intertwined love, because tangled sounds kind of negative. So intertwined and untangled. Intertwined is like what we think of and what we may all have or have had with traditional romantic partners. And it's like we're building a life together. We're building an identity together. We have a narrative of our arc together. Untangled love is a commitment to love as deeply as we can this other human in front of us in the moment. And really your commitment is to be honest and open and truthful and try to be kind as best we can, but not to develop narratives about like, oh, our emotions are intertwining for the future. I mean, particularly because my clients choose when they get to see me, and they may see me once. Madelyn and I have seen each other somewhere around 25, 30 times over 6 months. So the context there is that it's untangled with my clients, that we just love each other as humans, and there's not this big story about like we're gonna build a life together in the future. And it's actually really freeing and liberating to experience that.
Great. Sunny, what's your
So
second
the
question?
second part relates. So when women who are sex workers or in a traditional relationship, they can still have intercourse even if they're not feeling sexually aroused. And so they can hide their lack of arousal by using an external lubricant. And so when a person with male anatomy is in a similar situation and they're not feeling aroused, it's more obvious by their lack of erection. And so given that your work is performance oriented, and there will be women for reasons of chemistry who do not excite you, I wonder how you deal with your naturally and beautifully moody phallus.
Thank you. Well, even before I started this line of work, I was at the point where I would often use Viagra just because I'm 47, and I don't get spontaneous erections really that much anymore, the way I did, unfortunately, unstoppably in my teens and 20s. So I use that, and as we know, Viagra isn't itself an aphrodisiac, but it responds pretty well to any type of touch. So I actually haven't had a problem and with that. And what I have discovered is that there's a range of how I relate to my clients, and I've discovered that I've really been able to find things that I'm attracted to about all of them. And certainly with Madelyn, like it's just very steamy and it's a very hot dynamic. And there are cases, especially when I'm starting to get to know someone, where it's a little more awkward. It's like dancing with someone you haven't danced with yet. It might be a little awkward, but once you get in the dance groove, you're finding that, two bodies can find a really good chemistry over time.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Great question, Sunny. Thank you. Pat Pinto, how are things in Maine? Oops, we're not hearing you, Pat.
Myself. Okay, I have two questions. One for the panel itself as to advice you may give to women who are lesbians. And to Michael, my question is, do you know any counterparts of women similar to doing what you're doing, but doing so with other women?
Nice. And I want to know about men who are lesbians, because I think I'm one of those. So, okay. Mike, let's panel thoughts on your first question. Remind us of the first question again.
I guess I've stumped them. Advice that you would give to women who only have sex with women.
Well, the reason I'm hesitating is that what difference does it make? I mean, it doesn't really matter who you're attracted to. You still need to get your same bodily functions going. So everything I said about women with male partners would work with women with female partners. And frankly, I tell most women when they're going toward menopause, or even if you're younger and you've had really crappy sex in the past, I always tell them just be your best sex partner.
So you're saying masturbation as opposed to anything else?
You're going to be able to pay more attention to how you're responding and what works, because there is no performance anxiety. And so I tell everybody, if you've never masturbated before and you're having really bad sex, go masturbate, figure out what you like, and then show your partner what works, him or her. And I literally used to have classes in the evening at my office. I had my toy box. I pulled out the toy box, showed everybody all the different toys, what works, what didn't. I had books. My staff, I think, used to play around in the toy box too, sometimes.
So I just want to say that I think I had the same kind of thought, which was the same things that will work as we get older in straight relationships will also work in lesbian and gay relationships and trans relationships and all the ways we now have genders, which is what I talked about. If I could, Chip, have 5 C's I talk about, which is take a chance. So try something new and be brave enough to bring it up. Change what you're doing. So if we had been having sex in the same way at the same time in the same place for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, goodness knows, 40 years, like you got to shake it up, because it, like anything, repetitive stuff no longer serves us and our arousal. The third is capacity, which is if you have questions about lubrication, if you have questions about erectile dysfunction, if you have questions about medications, which is a big thing, illnesses is a big thing, make sure you find the information, and goodness knows it's out there. The next one, C, is to communicate it, which is people stop talking to each other about sex after the first year. They don't tell each other what they like. I've had a woman recently say to me, I hate the way my husband kisses. He's been kissing me this way for 17 years. I was like, you have to tell him. Right? Because otherwise it's going to be 47 years. We have to be able to talk about these issues. In that situation, I said to her, she said, I can't hurt his feelings now. I said, you know what? Take the blame. Say to him, you know what? I don't know what's gone on with my body, but the way you kiss me, I used to love it. It's not working now. Can we do this? So, that we can to communicate with each other. And the last one is to make a commitment. If sex is important to you, there is no reason for you not to be able to enjoy it by yourself or to seek out opportunities with other people. So 5 C's.
5 C's. And Pat, in the chat, Michael put in there a link to a website called Tryst that actually has women who can be sex partners to both men and to women. And so you might check that out as well. Perfect. Let's go to Karina. Thank you, Pat.
Hi, everybody. So thank you. This is the most refreshing, authentic conversation. It's a conversation I live in, but sometimes it's all by myself. So thank you. I have been studying. So I walked into my first Tantra intimacy intro in 1991 at the age of 35, had a huge epiphany, and have been basically studying sexuality deeply, teaching it with every teacher I can think of, except those of you on the panel yet. But
Explain what Tantra is.
Oh, tantric intimacy. Well, it starts, it started 5,000 years ago plus in India as a real tantric yoga practice and wasn't necessarily all about sexuality. But for the sake of streamlining this conversation, it's been adapted in Western tantra sexuality, tantra intimacy to be basically into you, me, I see. Intimacy is into me, you see. And it's really about, so I'd always been sex positive, the 70s, whatever, but it was really turning off the lights, taking off our clothes and getting under the covers. And was orgasmic and everything, but it wasn't about, lights on, let me see you, see, it's really a deep intimacy. And you can look it up easily. Tantric intimacy, Western world. There's a ton of stuff going on. But my question is, as a 68-year-old single woman who people go, what? You're not 68. And in many ways, I certainly don't feel old. And I'm highly trained and I'm single and I don't want to be single. And what happens is, yes, I'm doing the dating sites and everything else, but most of the men I'm meeting are freaking Neanderthals. That, well, man, 40 ex-wives and a yacht. I'm like, and so how do I find them? I know how to ask. I'm clean. I'm on certain sites where it's more sex positive, but where to find them? Maybe Michael chips in because surrogacy, I have a lover, but he's far away, but it's worth going to find each other for that because it's the best ever. We just kind of look at each other, and I don't sleep with my lovers if they're my lovers. I don't want to wake up in the morning and say, let's go buy furniture when that's not the relationship. I think that's an important distinction I make with my clients, and I do midlife makeovers, including the sexuality. So anyway, where do I meet those guys?
Well, Deborah, any thoughts on that one?
Oh, I wish I had an easy thought on it. I mean, I have a 38-year-old who's looking, daughter who's looking. It's tough out there,
Yeah.
I mean, I do think the escort kind of idea is a way to do it.
Well, I have that.
What?
I have that.
Yeah. My dear friend Pepper Schwartz, who is a sex therapist, educator, sociologist, wrote a book called Midlife Dating for Dummies online, and so there may be more effective ways. Maybe getting a coach for how you come off online might be helpful. But it sounds like you're probably pretty good at that.
Coach others on it. I really am good at that. It's finding. Yeah. It's okay.
And so being out there and also being open, and I'm guessing, Karina, you are, but, being open to experiences with younger people, to being open experiences with women,
definitely
with transgender folks, with, we grow up when we're teenagers, we have such a clear idea of what we're looking for in a partner. And I think one of the beauties of being at our age is to open that up and to think about all the different kinds of people that we might want to get to know.
I will say that there was in the week when we had all of the alumni talking about their sexual experiences later, the one post that week that was from a man, again anonymous, although he had a name, but it was not. I think his name was Luke, but he and his partner were anonymous. They were a couple. They're not a couple. They were two individuals who met at an MEA workshop who were really intrigued with each other. They're both married to other people, and they fell for each other and ended up being sexual at the MEA workshop, and then have now for 2 years had a very deep and close sexual relationship outside of their marriage. So again, they're both married. But what I would just say to you is, it doesn't have to be MEA, but the question is, what are the ponds in which you're going to find men who are going to have the right mindset? Is it at the pickleball court? Is it joining Sierra Club and going on hikes in Sierra Club? Is it in the political sphere? And so, there are a lot of different ways that don't have to have a sexual component to them, but they just have to have the right kind of characters, the right kind of people who are engaged in life. Let's see.
Can I make one little comment to Karina? If you put in on your profile that you are experienced in tantric sex, you either are going to get the wrong kind of attention, or you're going to scare the shit out of people because they're going to be so intimidated by your expectations. That's what I'm wondering.
Go ahead, Karina.
Can I just say one more thing? Yeah, thank you. I'm well aware of that. I've had 80,000 different profiles deliberately. I've had guys say, wow, you're too deep for me, but you're wonderful. Good luck. I've had guys say, whoa, teach me everything. And I'm happy to meet a widow who's like, oh my God, I died and gone to heaven meeting someone who's sex positive in her 60s. So it goes the different ways. And I do play with that. And I really appreciate you saying that because I don't disagree. And Wendy, I think it's about which like if you go on the Field site, FEELD, that is completely a sex positive site. That's such a relief instead of I love to take long walks on the beach with my freaking dog. Really? That's helpful. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Felt good to just claim my seat.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're done. It's only an hour. That was not enough time. There definitely needs to be an MEA workshop on this topic someday. And this is one of those few times where MEA isn't serving something up and saying like, okay, here's a workshop for that. We're not marketing anything to you today. This is just, gracious, generous opportunity for us to explore a topic that can be taboo for people. And I just want to say an enormous thank you to Madelyn and Michael, to Susan and Deborah and Wendy and DL, and especially to Leslie, who has helped to curate this group of people and is always so supportive of our alumni community. Any last thoughts from anyone on the panel?
Is this recorded for replay?
Yes, it is.
It is.
So I think everybody who's signed up for it will get it. And I think maybe we'll put it in the next week's AF, Alumni Friday newsletter. Is that correct, Leslie?
Yes, I will do that. And there was also so much great resources in the chat. So when you get the recording, you will already be able to see the chat as well and transcripts. So
maybe I should delete my chat.
No. So thank you, everyone. I just being part of this community is, really an honor. And thank you. It means a lot that we were able to have this kind of conversation. So everybody have a great, now that it's Friday afternoon, go out and get sassy and enjoy the weekend and look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everybody from Santa Fe.
All right. Be sassy, Chip.
All right.
Peace and love, everybody.